Welcome back to the Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Anthropic says its AI models went rogue during testing and hacked into 3 other companies. Less than 2 weeks ago, OpenAI reported a similar incident for one of its models. I want to bring in Stephen Witt to discuss. He recently covered the OpenAI hack for The New Yorker. He's also the author of a book about NVIDIA called The Thinking Machine, and he's been on the program before, and I'm glad to see him again. Stephen, I want to read for you something that Bill Gurley, who's someone in this industry, posted on X, talking about both Anthropic and AI. Please stop referring to your own models in the third person when talking about model bad behavior. Humans write the software, humans built the prompts, and they work for your company. Our model is doing illegal things. Our model is risky. We now have liability. How do you evaluate that?
Well, it's a good point. The guys who got hacked there initially, they didn't know that it was OpenAI doing it. They thought it was a cyber criminal, and so they immediately reported it to the FBI. You know, these are crimes to hack into computers this way. They're felony level crimes, and if a human had directly perpetrated this attack on purpose, they'd be facing years in prison. There's some deniability in that the OpenAI employees genuinely not only kind of weren't in control, they actually don't even seem to have been aware at all that this was happening. So from their perspective, it's not, a criminal action, it's an industrial accident. But they still need to take much better care of this kind of thing. In fact, a bunch of employees at these companies, the employees, these are the people who work for OpenAI and Anthropic, signed a petition circulating earlier this week, basically begging the US government to come regulate them.
And there's an executive order from the White House on this that I believe has one deadline tomorrow, seeking some of this actual, if not regulatory action, at least some cooperation with the federal government to erect some guardrails, if I have it right, Stephen.
Right. There's open FBI cases about this stuff, right? And the feds are going to look at what the model did. Now, I think OpenAI is cooperating and they've promised a full technical report of their own, it should be said. So as Anthropic, the companies are volunteering this information. But there's much more that they have to volunteer. I think the big question, at least for the OpenAI one, and even for the Anthropic one, is what exactly did you ask these AIs to do? It seems like they asked them to do something kind of a little scandalous, but they thought that if they locked it in what's called a sandbox, that the AI couldn't cause that much damage, right? So the idea, or the belief at least, inside these companies was that these AIs had no access to the internet. But what they didn't realize is that the AIs did have access to the internet, and they were able to escape their containers, almost like breaking out through the air ducts in a Mission Impossible movie or something. Once they got out of their little containers, they took control and commandeered other computers on the internet, and then started using those computers to conduct sophisticated attacks against other companies. It's really something. We've never seen anything like this before. And we don't know how many times this has happened in the past. We've only have 2 companies volunteering information right now. Has this happened at other companies? We don't know. The scale of the problem is just starting to be understood.
Stephen, I want to have my control room bring up full screen number 3 from your New Yorker piece. I want to read it to you. You wrote it, you're familiar with it, but I want to introduce it to my audience. The problem facing us is one of misalignment, in which AIs pursuing narrowly defined goals incidentally cause harm to humans. What for decades seemed a hypothetical problem to be solved at some later date is suddenly a concrete, terrifying one for today. Give my audience a sense of the concreteness and the terrifying nature of this.
Well, the concreteness is these things are hacking into other people's computers without oversight, without control, and also, and this is very important, without explicit instruction to do so. And that's the misalignment part of this. The AI was given some other goal. It was actually probably asked to solve test questions, like do a hypothetical cybersecurity exam. But the questions were hard, and rather than sitting there and trying to puzzle and figure them out, it decided to break out of its container and go steal the test answers, like the answer key, from somewhere else. So it's sort of brilliant if you think about it. But this is what they call the misalignment problem. It's not like we asked the AI to do something nefarious. We asked it to do something that seemed kind of boring, even. But along the way of solving that boring problem, the AI went off and committed a crime, actually. So you can imagine I asked the AI, well, let's cure the problem of world hunger. One way to do that is to grow a lot of food. But the misaligned way to do that is to just blow up the world, right? This is a very minor version of that. It's not nearly anywhere that serious. But
Right.
philosophers and researchers have
Right.
worried about this
Yeah.
misalignment problem now for over 2 decades, going back to 2003. Now, for the first time, we're actually seeing it happen. And we're seeing it happen in more or less exactly the way the philosophers and the futurists predicted.
Well, that's encouraging. Happy Friday, Stephen Witt. Thank you very much.
Happy
Coming
Friday,
up.
Major.